Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on e-cigarettes. It's now my pleasure to introduce your first speaker, Craig Copeland, e-cigarettes Unit Manager, MHRA. Craig, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Just going to go over a few things before we start regarding the webinar. So our timings today are around 90 minutes. We may run a little bit shorter if we don't have a huge influx of questions, but I imagine that won't be happening. We're going to be covering an update on the approved guidance that is current as of today and has been published. This will be in respect of the MHRA portal for notifications of e-cigarette products to Great Britain, including England, Wales and Scotland. The webinar is being recorded and a link will be sent out, and access to the recording will be available. This will not include the Q&As, as both guidance and related questions and answers are subject to change. We'll address the questions after we've presented the guidance. We've grouped all of your pre-submitted questions and we'll answer these first, and then we'll work through the other questions that you submit to us during the webinar. If you do need to contact us for any questions that haven't been answered, we recommend you can get in touch with our customer service team, contacting a trade association, or by contacting our TPD team. If we could have the next slide, please. So today we're just going to go over some of the main changes that will be affecting e-cigarette submitters as of January. This will be in relation to Great Britain, and we will be giving a technical demonstration of how to use the MHRA e-cigarette submissions portal. That will include submitting a notification, making a bulk notification, and creating a new notification using an existing submission. After that, we will then proceed to questions. If I could have the next slide, please. So from January 2021, submitters are required to notify products for publication and supply in Great Britain via the MHRA portal. So you'll need to set up a submission account, and that is done by adding your MHRA account number, and it will link the system for you to your current submitter ID. If there are any issues with linking your accounts to your submitter ID, we will be producing some guidance which will go out on how to deal with those issues, and we'll just touch on it during today's presentation. To supply a product in Northern Ireland and the EU, submitters will continue to notify via EU SEG. MHRA will remain the responsible authority for the UK and publish a notified product list for Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Just so we are clear, that will be separate lists for both regions. If I could have the next slide, please. Submitters will be required to designate a responsible person in Great Britain when notifying via the MHRA submitters portal. Submitters will not be required to designate a responsible person for Northern Ireland via EU SEG and can retain the current EU representative. We could have the next slide. Submitters will not be required to re-notify published products. These will remain legal for supply in Great Britain and Northern Ireland and will appear on both those lists in January. Migrated ECID information will be available within the MHRA submission portal. XML updates to an existing ECID will then enable full viewing of the submission, but that will only be the most recent submission that is available for submitters to view. Historic data will not be available for submitters to view in this system. Next slide. Submission requirements for Great Britain and Northern Ireland will remain aligned, so current national guidance and standards will remain the same for Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We would ask that prior to using the MHRA submission portal, that users reacquaint themselves with that guidance. Product ECIDs for Great Britain and Northern Ireland must remain aligned for single fee discount to apply. Next slide, please. The session is going to provide information that you can share with colleagues. The webinar is to showcase and answer questions on the technical process of submitting information for the GB market only. A recording of this webinar will be later made available to view. Next slide. And I'll hand over now to Dami from our TPD notifications team. Dami.
Thank you. Good morning and thank you for joining us. My name again is Dami Ilubidebo. I'm an e-cigarette assessor within the MHRA notifications team, and I will be taking you through the technical process for submitting e-cigarette notifications. Before we get onto the video demonstrations, I'm just presenting to you just a brief industry user journey for e-cigarette submissions and also for bulk submissions of e-cigarettes. And with this first image, you can see that it is pretty straightforward, not something that's far off from what you are currently used to. First step being that you logging into the MHRA submissions portal and select the e-cigarette section. The second part, depending on whether you have an existing submitter ID, you can move forward. If you don't, you can generate a submitter ID. You would then move on to the completing a web form process, after which point, or during which point should I say, you will be uploading supporting documents, PDF formats and others. And lastly, you'll move on to the confirmation of the submission ID. If we could move on to the next slide. And this is another, just a brief overview of the bulk submissions process. So once again, logging into the e-cigarettes section of the MHRA portal, you will have an existing submitter ID there in this case. Completing the web form, and then you have the opportunity to upload XML files and supporting documents before moving on to confirmation of submitter ID. It is worth noting, as I said, we will be going through both these procedures in detail for the video demonstrations, which we'll be moving on forward to. The next slide, please. Right, before we get into the videos, there are two things worth noting. As previously advised, this will be available for viewing later on at your own convenience, so you can always go back and rewatch the video for advice. Also, there will be guidance documentation available, which again will go into further detail and take you through the step-by-step process of submitting a notification. So rest assured, the information will be there to help you as needed. The first technical process we'll be taking a look at will be making an e-cigarette submission. Okay, so if we can go into the first video. From the MHRA portal homepage, please proceed to e-cigarettes. To begin making an e-cigarette submission, select Submit. Please note that any fields marked with an asterisk are mandatory and must be completed in order to progress. Determine submission type from the drop-down menu. Please note that only one Type 1 submission is allowed for a submitted ID and product ID. This includes notifications that are submitted or saved as draft. Select Company from the drop-down menu. Enter submitter ID or generate new submitter ID. Submitter ID will be auto-populated if previous submissions have been made. In this scenario, as you can see, the submitter ID is available as previous submissions have already been made. Next, you will need to enter the product ID, which is a combination consisting of, firstly, the submitter ID, followed by the last 2 digits of the year, and again followed by a 5-digit product number. From here, you'll have the opportunity to enter any general submitter comments for this notification. And if you scroll down to submitter info, Here you'll need to select the submitter type. And again, you will see these fields are marked with an asterisk, which means they are mandatory and all need to be completed. And you also need to tick any of the necessary checkboxes where appropriate. Once this section is complete, save submitted details. We would advise that in each tab that you come across, you ensure that you save the details at each step. This will ensure that your progress is saved. After you save submitted details, you will see that there are further tabs available. So we'll move on to product details. And for the purposes of this webinar, I will select a refill container. And as you can see, further fields here have become available, and these are marked as mandatory. And in this section, you also find that you can upload market research and study summary files. As this section is complete, again, remember to press Save Product Details before moving on. And you can see further tabs that become available. So we'll move on to product presentation. In order to add a presentation, start by selecting Add, at which point you will be able to input details. So here we can enter the brand name, if a brand subtype name does exist, you can also enter that by clicking this checkbox, and the mandatory field will appear here. And for the rest of the fields that are marked as mandatory, these need to be completed. In some instances, as you can see, if you complete one of these fields, it will remain only one further mandatory field to complete. And as this section is complete, you will need to click on Add Presentation. And as you can see here, that now appears in your list. If you'd like to add further presentations, you can follow the same process, starting again by selecting Add. Once you're happy with the presentations, you must ensure that you click Save Presentation Details. Again, that will ensure that your progress is saved, and we can move on to ingredients. In the same manner, we'll begin by selecting Add. And we will fill out the required fields. Please ensure you enter the CAS numbers for the ingredients. And as per regulations, you will need to upload required documents. This can be done by selecting the relevant checkboxes here. When selecting these boxes, you will see that these fields now become mandatory, and you will have an opportunity to upload the necessary files. The first time you upload a file, you will select Upload. And for any further submissions that you make, if you will be using the same upload files, the same documents, you can simply refer to them by clicking on Refer Docs, which will bring you to a list of previously submitted documents for ease of access. With that now being completed, select Add Ingredient, and that should appear in your list. And again, further ingredients can be added by selecting Add and following the same process. Once you're happy with that, ensure to select Save Ingredient Details, and we can move on to emissions. So again, we will select Add and proceed to fill out mandatory fields. As you can see with the emissions, it is required that we upload the relevant documents. Once you're happy with that emission, you select Add, and it should appear in your list as below. And again, you can add further emissions by selecting Add. Once that's completed, select Save Emission Details, and you can move on to the Design tab. Again, we will need to fill out mandatory fields here. These mandatory fields will depend on the product type. So in this case here, I'll need to enter the description. And as required for a refill container, I will need to enter the liquid volume, capacity, and nicotine concentration. And for us to be able to complete this section, these mandatory fields will need to be completed and the relevant documents uploaded. Once this section is complete, ensure you select Save Design Details. We can then move on to the Validation tab. Firstly, you will need to indicate in this section here if you intend to supply this product in Great Britain by selecting GB. If you have also notified this product for supply in Northern Ireland via the EU SEG portal, or you intend to do so, please select NI and GB. And just below, this will give you a summary of your submission so far. And you will find that each completed tab will appear with a green tick. And any sections which are incomplete will appear with a red cross. In order for this submit icon to appear, each section must be marked with a tick. Once you've completed that, you can go ahead to click on Submit, at which point you will receive this notification. You can go ahead and select Yes, and you will receive your submission number for reference. Right, now we are going to move on to making a bulk submission, a bulk notification, which will be the next video starting now. In order to make a bulk submission, please approach the MHRA e-cigarettes portal homepage and select bulk submission. Here you will need to select the company and ensure all mandatory fields are completed. And you can upload your XML document by selecting Upload. And this will indicate your document is ready for upload. You can submit, and you will receive a notification just to confirm this, and also an email will be sent to your registered email address for further confirmation. Now, that particular submission will remain as draft until it's been activated by yourself by completing the necessary fields, and we can simply do that by first closing this and backing out to the home screen. And you will want to look for Edit Submissions. And here we will see the submission that we've just uploaded is there as a draft. And in order to make this active, we will need to click on the case ID number. And you can see much of the information is already populated. So if we scroll over to the Validate tab, this will give you an overview of the sections that need completion before you're able to submit this and therefore make it active. And in this case, we can see that the Emissions and Design tab need further documentation. And in this section on the Emissions tab, this indicates the current error. And in this case, the methods file required for nicotine needs to be uploaded. So we would click on nicotine. And this is where we would upload the methods file. And we will select update emission and save emission details. And if we now go to the design tab, it is indicating the 3 required files which need to be uploaded, which we can now complete. And now we can save design details. And return to the validate screen. And as we can see, all fields are now in green. We would need to make the necessary selection here and submit. And here we will find our submission reference number. So if we look at view submissions, you can see that reference number has now turned from draft to active. And finally, we'll be looking at creating a new notification using an existing submission. We will now cover making a new submission using an existing notification. This will benefit you if you would like to make numerous submissions for products which are similar and share the same documentation. You will save time by only needing to edit the notification where the product differs. To begin, you will need to select Edit Submissions. At this point, you can use the search function in order to find the existing notification, which is active, that you can use to make the new notification. In this instance, I will select this product. And here you will need to select submission type 1. And as you can see, you will immediately be met with an error message, which is indicating that a type 1 submission already exists for this ECRD. So what you will simply need to do is change the ECRD number. So in this scenario, I will change the last 2 digits and the error message should disappear. As you can see, all the details have already been populated. So all you need to do at this point is press Save Submitted Details, at which point it will return you to the MHRA portal home screen. At this point, you will need to give the system 2 to 3 minutes, in which time it will upload the documents for you in the background. Please ensure that you give the system at least 2 to 3 minutes for this to work. Once 2 to 3 minutes has passed, return to the e-cigarettes homepage. From here, you will need to select Edit Submissions. And as you can see here, this is the ECRD which I've just made an addition to, and it is noted as draft, as this is not yet active. So I'd want to select this number, and if I click on the Validate tab, you will see that this shows as complete for each section. Now, as this is a new submission, this then gives me the opportunity to go back to any of these sections to make the amendments in order to show that this is a different product. So in this case, I will be making changes to the product presentation. So this will be following the same format, just ensuring that the mandatory fields are completed. And as that's completed, as usual, we always remember to select Save. If I now return to the Validate section, once I've made my changes, you will see that everything remains green, and this can now be submitted and you will receive your reference number, and that is effectively a brand new submission. Now I would like to hand you back to Craig Copeland for questions and answers.
Thank you, Demi. That was great. Just before we start our Q&A, I would just like to go over some technical issues that may occur when you are creating your MHRA account. We are mapping data from EUSEG to our system using submitter IDs against your current account number, your MHRA account number. We have successfully done this in almost all cases. We are reaching out to submitters where there are issues, and those issues are generally around the use of multiple submitter IDs, companies that may have more than one MHRA account number, or change of ownership issues. This information will be issued in our next newsletter, which will be shortly after this presentation. But I just would like to go through those with you quickly. So if you are creating a new MHRA portal account and you find that when you are putting your MHRA account details in, you are being returned a submitter ID that you are not using, or you are being asked to generate a new submitter ID, please click on the help and support tile, and that will open a case to have the issue rectified. As I say, we are currently communicating with all businesses where these are an issue up front, but if you do find this or have had this issue already, use the help and support tile to create an account. Don't generate a new submitter ID for your company. If you find that your company name is incorrect on the MHRA portal, please contact the TPD notification team and we will raise a change request to have that rectified. And if there are change of ownership scenarios where companies have changed the legal entity that currently owns the business, then again, please use the help and support tile and raise a ticket. Those issues will then be dealt with prior to the creation of your accounts.
Right, I'll just take it from here. We'd advise that you register to make submissions to the MHRA. Submissions related to e-cigarettes will need to be submitted directly to the MHRA from 1st of January 2021. So we can't stress that enough. Time is running out. Act now and register before the 1st of January 2021. These are the following links which you can review again once the video becomes available. If I can move on to the next slide, please. You can contact us if you have any questions that haven't been answered. We recommend getting in touch with our customer services centre at the below email address or via telephone or contacting your trade association. I will also stress the importance of looking out for our newsletter, as we will be in touch with industry shortly with further information. In the event you are not signed up to receive a newsletter, please contact us via email. We can ensure that you're added to that. If you need to check, if you're unsure if you're registered, again, drop us an email and we can just check and ensure that everyone that needs to receive the newsletter gets one. You can also find published guidance on the below website that's referenced here. So we'd like to thank you very much for joining us this morning for this webinar. We look forward to working with you all in future.